Welcome to WikiPodcast.
Hello.
You're turning into the second part of our miniseries exploring Enlightenment German idealism and beyond.
And today, we're really diving deep into Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, a major figure.
Absolutely. And this deep dive, it's really crafted for you, the listener, right? Someone who wants to grasp these, let's face it, complex philosophical ideas.
Yeah, efficiently, effectively. We're aiming for those key aha moments.
Without getting totally lost in academic jargon.
Exactly. So our main source today is the Wikipedia entry on Hegel. It's pretty comprehensive, covers his life, work, key ideas.
And our mission, really, is to unpack two huge aspects of his thought: his dialectical method and his philosophy of history.
Get ready for some maybe surprising insights. We want to equip you with a solid understanding of these really influential concepts.
Okay, let's jump in. Hegel's dialectical method. First thing, that famous phrase, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Turns out Hegel himself didn't really use it much, did he?
That's right. It's a common misconception. It got popularized later by people like Chalobes, but it's kind of a simplification. It doesn't quite capture the nuance of Hegel's own thinking.
So if that phrase isn't quite right, what words did Hegel use? How did he describe his approach?
Well, his preferred term was actually speculative.
Yeah.
Speculative. He talked about thinking having three essential moments.
Moments.
Yeah, moments. First, the abstract or intellectual moment, that's Verstand. Then the dialectical or negatively rational moment, negative vernünftig.
Okay.
And finally, the speculative or positively rational moment, positive vernünftig.
All right, let's break this down. The dialectical moment, negative vernünftig. That sounds pretty important. What's the core idea there?
It really is central. The dialectical moment is basically where our fixed ideas, our neat categories from the understanding, start to unravel when you push them.
So when you think through an idea and find it leads to a contradiction or undermines itself somehow?
Exactly. You hit its limits, its internal inconsistencies. It negates itself in a way.
So it's like a breakdown of that initial certainty.
Right. But for Hegel, this isn't just destructive. It's a necessary step towards, a deeper understanding.
Which brings us to the third moment, the speculative one. Positive vernünftig. What happens after the breakdown?
So the speculative moment moves beyond just seeing the problem, the negation. It's about grasping how these apparently conflicting ideas can actually be integrated, reconciled at a higher level.
Integrated. How?
It's about seeing a more comprehensive truth that includes both sides of the conflict. The contradictions are, in his famous term, sublated.
Sublation. Okay, Aufhebung. That's a really key Hegelian term. This is layers, right?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because Aufhebung means like three things at once. It means to raise up or elevate something.
Okay.
It also means to cancel or abolish it.
Right.
And yet it also means to keep or preserve it.
Wait, how can it be canceled and preserved? That sounds contradictory in itself.
It does. But that's the genius of it, according to Hegel. The contradiction isn't just wiped away, it's overcome by being incorporated into a richer, more developed concept.
So you keep the valuable part, but transcend the limitation.
Precisely. The opposing ideas' truths are preserved and lifted up, while their limitations are sort of canceled out within this bigger picture. Like, think about self-consciousness. You're both the subject doing the thinking and the object being thought about simultaneously.
Got it. Okay. And you mentioned moments earlier. Can we clarify that term a bit more? Das Moment?
Sure. So a moment can mean an essential feature of something, like a part of a whole when you look at it statically.
Right.
But it also means an essential phase or stage in this dynamic dialectical process we're talking about. So those contradictory elements, they aren't just separate things clashing. They're necessary interconnected moments of a larger developing whole.
So it's about seeing the connections, the process, not just isolated ideas.
Exactly. And this actually leads to what some people call Hegel's anti-methodology.
Anti-methodology, meaning he didn't have a method.
Well, not in the sense of a fixed toolkit you apply from the outside. He thought the method should arise from the subject matter itself. It's about understanding the self-organization, the inner necessity of whatever you're studying.
So you let the topic dictate the approach rather than forcing it into a preset box.
You've got it. The real goal is to show that a lot of the either ways we think are often, false dichotomies. The dialectic helps us see beyond those simple oppositions and integrate different perspectives.
Okay, that's a helpful look at the dialectic. Now let's switch gears a bit, but I suspect it connects. Hegel's philosophy of history. History seems absolutely central for him.
Oh, completely. For Hegel, philosophy is historical. You can't really understand ideas, he thought, without understanding where they came from, how they developed.
And there's that distinction in German between history and Geschichte,
Right.
right? Which one was the Ladle interested in?
He was definitely focused on Geschichte. So history is more like, the chronicle of events, the empirical stuff. Geschichte, though, that's about the deeper story, the underlying developmental logic, the meaning unfolding within those events. He was looking for the universal patterns.
And what about us, human beings, in this Geschichte?
Hegel saw us as fundamentally historical creatures. We don't just live through time. Time shapes us. Our experiences, the events we live through, they become part of our self-understanding, our self-knowledge.
Which is why the history of philosophy is part of philosophy itself for him.
Exactly. Studying Plato isn't just history. It's engaging with a stage in the development of thought that's still relevant to how we think now.
Now, Hegel's famous for seeing progress in history. What did he see as the goal, the end point or driving force, the telos?
The telos of history, for Hegel, was the unfolding progress in the consciousness of freedom.
Consciousness of freedom.
Yeah. He believed that the more aware a society, a culture, becomes of the essential freedom of spirit or the human mind, the more well advanced it is. And this isn't just thinking about freedom, it's realized in political life, in institutions, in how we understand truth itself.
And he laid out these broad stages, these epochs of world history based on who was understood to be free.
Right. It's a simplified model, of course, but
Right.
basically, the Oriental world, as he called it, where maybe only one person, the ruler, is free.
Okay.
Then the Greco-Roman world, where some are free the citizens, but not slaves, not women necessarily.
Right.
And then finally, the Germanic world, which for him meant European Christendom, essentially where the principle is recognized that all persons are inherently free, at least in principle.
That leads to a tricky point. His discussion of slavery in the ancient world, how did he approach that? Because it sounds like he acknowledged it was part of that Greco-Roman stage.
It is tricky. He viewed it, historically, as part of a specific phase where the full idea of universal freedom hadn't yet emerged. He saw it as maybe a necessary position within that specific moment's limited understanding of right and wrong.
So, contextualizing it historically.
Yes, but, and this is absolutely crucial, he wasn't justifying it morally for all time. He very clearly argued that slavery is fundamentally incompatible with reason, with the rational state, with individual freedom. It was something that had to be overcome as consciousness progressed.
So understanding its historical place, but condemning it from the standpoint of developed reason.
Exactly. He was trying to fit it into his historical narrative while still upholding the ultimate moral demand for freedom.
Now, there's this idea, sometimes associated with Hegel, about history reaching an end or completion. What's that about?
Yeah, that's a big interpretation, heavily influenced by thinkers like Kojève and later Fukuyama talked about the end of history. The idea is that once the principle of universal freedom is recognized and institutionalized, maybe in liberal democracy, history's main developmental story is kind of over.
But that's debated.
Hugely debated. Many would argue, look, the scope of freedom is still expanding. Think about fights for inclusion for marginalized groups. And the content of freedom is evolving too, like what we see in international human rights declarations. So maybe history isn't complete in that final sense at all.
And Hegel's narrative often points westward for this progress of freedom that's also been challenged.
Definitely. His account had a strong east to west movement. But contemporary critics point out, maybe that's too simplistic or Eurocentric. They might point to democratic developments in India or post-apartheid South Africa, suggesting the movement of freedom isn't just a one-way street, or perhaps it's even shifting direction. It shows his framework is still something we grapple with and revise.
Okay, so let's tie these two big ideas together. How does the dialectical method actually connect to this philosophy of history? How do they work together in Hegel's system?
Well, the dialectic is really the engine driving that historical progress we just talked about.
How so?
The contradictions and limitations within any given stage of consciousness or any form of social organization, those are the dialectical tensions. They inevitably lead to conflict, to critique, and ultimately to being overcome or sublated into a new, more comprehensive understanding of freedom, a new social form.
So the historical stages aren't just replacing each other randomly. There's an internal logic, the dialectic, pushing things forward through resolving contradictions toward greater freedom.
Precisely. Reason and freedom for Hegel aren't just static ideals you discover. They are actual achievements that unfold through history, driven by this dialectical process.
So they have potential, naturally, but their full realization happens over time through this struggle and integration.
Exactly right. It's a dynamic unfolding, not a fixed state.
Okay, let's step back and think about what this all means for you, the listener. Understanding Hegel's dialectic. It gives you a different way to look at arguments, doesn't it?
It really does. It's a framework for analyzing complex issues, spotting the hidden tensions, the underlying contradictions, and crucially, it encourages seeking integrated solutions, moving beyond simple either thinking.
And his philosophy of history, even with the critiques, offers a lens, a way to maybe view societal changes, even the messy ones, as part of a larger, albeit complicated, move towards a greater awareness of freedom.
Yeah, it prompts you to think about how our own time, our own struggles and debates fit into that longer story. How are we contributing or maybe hindering that development?
And here's something to really chew on. How could these Hegelian ideas about freedom, dialectics, and historical progress apply today? Think about current debates on social justice, or individual rights versus collective good, or how different cultures interact and shape global
Right.
values.
Are there dialectical tensions playing out? Is our understanding of freedom being sublated into something new? It's a powerful lens.
So, the big takeaway for your own journey of learning. Hegel really pushes us to embrace complexity, to see those contradictions not just as problems, but as, well, opportunities for deeper insight.
And to see ourselves not just as observers, but as active participants in this ongoing story, this unfolding of human understanding and freedom. It's quite a profound challenge, really.
It certainly is. A lot to think about there.
Thanks for listening. Write us in the comments your opinion on the episode and what other topics you would like us to talk about. Subscribe to the channel to help us reach more listeners. Thank you and have an amazing day.